this is Bree Street in Cape Town, and it is the single most populated street on the planet when it comes to restaurants and bars. Between 2 kilometers that way and another kilometer that way, there are about 85,000 of them, and they are by and large exceptional. I'm going to one in particular though, heading up these stairs to the Culture Wine Bar, which is home to more wine by the glass from all over the world than just about anywhere else on the planet. If you have a look at the photos that adorn the walls of Culture Wine Bar, you'll discover I have been here before. In fact, a couple of times we've done a live show here before. I've dropped in for a glass of wine, and every time I've been here, I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Not just because there is a wonderful array of wine here, but because the people who give it to you, the people who share it with you, are just so passionate about everything around the art that is wine, and not just South African wine, wine from all over the world. And you'll discover when you get here really quickly that it almost becomes too difficult to decide what to drink, because the wine here by the glass is not just South African wine, there is wine here from just about everywhere. In fact, Caroline, who heads up the sommelier side of things, tells me she thinks she's even got some Zimbabwean wine hidden away in a corner somewhere. I probably won't be ordering that, but I will be ordering a whole lot of other wine during the course of this evening as I touch base with the different appeals of Culture Wine Bar. You can see behind me just the list of bottles from all over the world, either by the glass, by the bottle. It is Disneyland for wine drinkers. So that's me while I'm here at Culture. It's not all you're going to see on the show though. A little later on, we head to Marble in Johannesburg and catch up with Carl and Aidan from Tokara, brand new vintages from the Stellenbosch estate, including the new Telos, which costs more than the GDP of Belgium, but by God, is it good to drink. Before we do that though, I head out to the Hemelanada Valley, where a guy called JC from Switzerland and a lady called Caroline have created one of South Africa's most iconic wine estates and most iconic wine brands. And it's JC I'm focused on as we head to the vineyards and discover that although the Hemelanada is awash with world-class Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, that's not all that they do at creation. So at my cellar back at home, we have regular visitors. We love having friends come around, and many of those friends know their wine. But I know that people really know their wine when they move through the red wine section of the cellar. They stop quite suddenly, have a look, and then look at me imploringly to ask if there's a possibility of opening one bottle in particular. And that bottle, almost without fail, is the art of Pinot Noir from creation. In a valley that is full of world-class Pinot Noir, it is a wine that continues to arouse excitement right around the world and in my cellar as well, and has many disappointed people, because normally I say, sorry, no, move on, we'll have to find something else. But it's the wine I've got here today, and not just the wine, but the man responsible for making it as well. JC, lovely to see you, and thanks for having me at Creation.
Good to have you here.
And we are in the actual vineyard that produces this wine.
That's it. So we are in the Art of Pinot Block, who is now 20 years of age. And it's incredible, exciting to have this kind of older vineyards now in production. And I think it does reflect in the glass, that it gets nicely complex, top layers, and many layers to the whole wine. And we always explain in wine, you know, obviously we as winemakers, we are proud as winemakers to make wine and put our knowledge in, but at the end of the day, it is a product of nature and of the right grapes. The grape quality is everything. And so all the vineyards definitely contribute in the quality, and that's the reason we are most exciting is for me to walking in the old vineyard blocks to see they are healthy, in good shape, and knowing that they give us another many years of grapes for the future.
There are a few elements I noticed as soon as we arrived. Very proudly, there's the 2003 year that's up as you arrived. This is when these were planted. On top of that, you know, it's fairly rough. You haven't had a lawnmower in here for ages. It's looking very, very natural. Tell me about, in terms of the wine you make, both the age of these vines, but also that natural process and how that enables you to make wine that you believe is better.
You know, end of the day, you want to have the plant in a happy space, and I think to achieve that, it is that you work as close as possible with nature, and nature basically means you have things growing, and when you see this vineyard block, there is no use of herbicides. We have a very good soil structure. That means you have a lot of microorganisms living in these soils, and they're all contributing to have healthy plants. And I think end of the days, that is what you want to achieve. You're farming for long term. You want to really ideally carry that over generations. And so, yeah, I think things look all up. We really sometimes, you know, you look into a project and you are slightly worried, but this is now really a vineyard block. We are very positive. We think there will be still a lot of good vintages coming out of it.
Explain in simple terms for people for whom this maybe sounds a little strange. And in most spaces, when things get older, they're not quite so good. People get older, and sports people get older and start to retire. And yet with wine, as the vines get older, what we receive just seems to get better and better.
I try to explain it is like a human being. When you're in your youth and in your growth patterns, you maybe not really focus so much on your knowledge and your expertise and experience. And in vineyards, when you're looking at a young plant, they're really in the beginning establishing their roots. So they're really focused about growth, putting roots into the ground to establish themselves. But maybe the main focus is not of the quality grapes. And when we suddenly established ourselves as human beings, we get wiser, our answers should get better. And so therefore also I think the grapes just getting slightly smaller. It is not anymore big bunches, the berry gets a bit smaller. The plant overall is in a more balanced place. So that basically means the growth is not erratic, that it's too vigorous or not vigorous enough. So over the years we're really balancing the growth, that the plant just has enough growth, but not too much and not too little. And so therefore the grapes have better quality in expression of fruit flavors, overall aromatic flavors. And so we really believe that it not necessarily means the oldest is the best, but I think it needs a certain minimum age to come in this kind of category where you are in a sweet spot to really make fantastic wines. And for us, I think when you have 15, 20 years plus, I really believe it's fantastic to make wines. And then yes, older it gets, it can still maintain, but it doesn't desperately has to be 80 plus. So I think this one here now can go for a few years ahead of me, maybe for the next generation, let's hope. Interesting when you taste wines, and we have that on many cultivars, not just Pinot Noir, is when you taste it very young, often you have this kind of more primary fruit, very expressive, but nearly too much. And when it gets a little bit older, we start to see that it reduces this primary fruit in much more a kind of a complex, more layered aromatic profile. And that's not about winemaking skill. This is about purely what gives you the flavor from the plants. And I think therefore we do strongly believe that nature is your biggest friend. You have to look after the plants and try to have these older vineyards to make quality wines.
And quality wines are what we've got here, and in your case, particularly high quality, because you mentioned to me earlier today that you feel this particular 2021 might be the best Pinot Noir you've made yet.
The 21 art, in my opinion, is a very well succeeded vintage. But you know, the thing is, I think in wine you also start to realize, slightly older you get, that it is also need a little bit of chance from nature, things coming together and suddenly results in a very good vintage. It's difficult to duplicate it every year, but when you get it, obviously you will take it. And so 21 was a very nice growing season for us. And in the winemaking over the years, we do learn to read the terroir and when we should to pick and what should we do in the whole process. But in 21, I thought myself here, things really came nicely together. We used much more whole bunch to really keep up with the freshness, and the balance between what we achieve between alcohol, tannins, acidity, flavor profile really reflects in a way where I feel really proud of. We try to do it every year. There's no 100% guarantee, but I think we're closing in to really understand that the vineyard block every year will be better.
If I go back to the early days of my wine journey here in South Africa, we often spoke of the Hamel Valley in the context of Burgundy. It is South Africa's Burgundy. We're making Pinot Noir, we're making Chardonnay. That was the reference point, and an understandable one. We then transitioned, I felt, especially over the last 5 years or so, to far more of a, it's the Hamel on its own terms, and we speak of the wine here being made with the terroir, and yes, those same varietals, but really as a Hamel wine. I now almost feel that we're taking that next step where at the very top end, Pinot Noir such as this one now goes back into the Burgundy conversation, but not as we're trying to do something like them, but we're making wine that in many cases is just as good as some of the very best wine to come out of France's iconic home of exactly this grape.
No, I fully agree with that statement. I mean, look, we have benchmark reference points all the time in wine, and when it comes to Pinot Noir, yes, Burgundy is reference. In Chardonnay, we'll be also back to Burgundy. In the beginning, you desperately like to have some airtime that the person start to talk and say it's nearly as good as maybe a good Burgundian wine. But I think over the years, we definitely can take it slightly more on a backseat, knowing that when we go in blind tastings, we can live up against all these fantastic wines out of these different regions in the world. But we, in purpose, start really to focus on our place, because what really makes us proud of is that we're producing a unique wine from this specific place we call the Hemel-Narten, and I'm pretty sure each wine estate would then even go further and say from each specific site, specific wines who reflect in a specific, slightly small location from a specific farm. So therefore, we try to reduce a little bit the reference points of Burgundy and be actually proudly South Africans, Hemel-Narten producers with our uniqueness. And I think we gained much more self-confidence to send that message out in the world, because we really start to realize it is world-class products coming out of this little corner on the southern tip of Africa.
You and Caroline have done a marvellous job. You've sold the story really well, but it's not a story you can sell without the wine to back it up, and you've consistently produced that wine. I'm not sure if this is your best vintage yet. I'm probably going to have 3 or 4 bottles just to be absolutely sure. But what I do know is that, as with my friends who come around to my cellar and try and raid it for the wine, it's a consistent favourite for me, and it's also a wonderful celebration of the wine of this valley, and also your journey from saying goodbye to Switzerland and touching down in South Africa. So thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for some wonderful wine, and here's to many more great vintages.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for your good effort to really promoting South African wines across the board in the whole world.
It's a great pleasure. Cheers. So there we go. The only person probably unhappy with all of this is Roger Federer, because he is no longer the most famous Swiss person associated with South Africa. Always a treat getting to spend some time at Creation in the Hemel-Narten Valley with JC and his range of varietals that go far beyond the Burgundy types that you normally associate with that part of the world. Now, just down the road, another part of the world with its cool climate and its preference for Burgundy styles, for Chardonnay and for Pinot Noir, but a number of other wines amongst them, and that would be Elgin, and it's from Elgin that I find a couple of wines here in the wine library at Culture. Some of the Village Pinot Noir from Paul Kluver, taking its cue from the classifications of Burgundy, where the Village wines are the simple, the more entry level, dare we say, and then take a step up, and the Paul Kluver Estate Pinot Noir, and all of this leads up into the 7 Flags. It's really interesting to try all of them, which you can here at Culture, and a whole pile of wine that sits inside this wine library. This is the mecca of Culture Wine Bar. If you can get past security, up the stairs and through the doors, this is where you want to be, because it's surrounded by not just really high market premium wine, but also really interesting wine. Take the guys from Spider Pig. Here is their Brosé. Now, only these guys could throw together some Pinotage, some Colombard, and some Cinsault, but somehow, as always seems to be the case with Spider Pig, they make it work rather well. Some of the wines of Blackwater sitting above me. I look at Elemental Bob. You might remember we had him on Dan Really Likes Wine a while back. Sons of Sugarland and their Barbara. So it's varietals that we don't always see, but then also stuff that's perhaps a little more familiar. Some Boschendal Bubbles or some of the Prospector from Jordan. There's not much you won't find at Culture Wine Bar in the library. And if you speak very nicely to them, they'll let you come up and have a look around and explore what is a sprawling collection of wine, not just by varietal, but also by vintage and by geography. In fact, I'm going to do my best to stay in this room as long as I can, accompanied by a rather nice glass of Chenin Blanc from the Molyneux that is available, like so many other wines here, by the glass at Culture. And while I finish off this glass, time to head north and as promised, back to Johannesburg and to Marble Restaurant, where Aidan and Carl from Tokara took me through the newest vintage of some of their wines and also explained how the viticulturalist and the marketer work together with the winemaker to ensure the complete package for which Tokara is so celebrated. Once a new year rolls around in the Johannesburg wine industry, you start getting a little bit nervous waiting for the coolest invitation of the first quarter, the Tokara tasting. Mine came a little late. I suspect I might have been on the B list, but at least I am here, not just to talk about wine, but also to hang out with a couple of really cool guys who've got a really cool project on the go, because Carl, not just making wine, but at Tokara there is some serious change afoot with regards to harnessing the sun and turning your energy solutions around.
Yeah, we have to, hey? I think we all run the gambit of not being able to function when there's load shedding. We've done it in the past now with diesel generators, but with diesel prices where they are, it doesn't really make financial sense. So about 7 months ago, we commissioned a 780 kilowatt solar plant, which supplies the entire farm, from all the restaurants to the winery to the olive shed, including the owner's accommodation as well, with electricity during the day, which is amazing. We haven't gone into storage yet because batteries are a little bit too expensive, but it's wonderful to be able to green ourselves and to, in the same breath, give ourselves a little bit of breathing space to be able to create fantastic wines.
I can imagine how much of an impact that will have on the restaurants, on the art of winemaking, of all the stuff we don't see firsthand. Aidan, what about farming? How much is solar going to change what you do?
Well, as Carl says, we haven't got into storage, but one way we found a way to store some of that energy is during the day, we pump up on the green solar energy, water up to our highest dams, and only pump during the sunlight hours. And so we're storing water and the power used to get the water up there. We then gravity feed that water back down to the vineyards. So in an indirect way, we are actually storing energy by moving our water up. And it's now great to know that all our vineyards are irrigated during the sunlight hours. We've changed all our timing and we only irrigate during sunlight hours. We've had to do a little bit of planning around that, but it's just a great feeling to know that we're getting it from the sun.
Which speaks to some of the work you do, and it's rather a lot of work that we don't often see as those of us who drink the wine. We normally get either the winemaker gushing about how hard he's had to work and put this together, or we get somebody like Carl selling the wine and claiming to have worked even harder, whereas it's actually the viticulturists, I suspect, who are the guys that are putting in the long hours right through the year.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that we do behind the scenes that probably cannot fit on the back label of a bottle of wine, and things that we're really proud of. Sustainability has been the core of our farming enterprise actually from the beginning, right from our respect for the environment that we have with alien clearing projects, but more so with our green fertilizers and compost production, which is huge now on the farm. It started in the early days with a professor from the University of Stellenbosch that helped us set it up, and it's now become part of our farming enterprise completely. So everything that we generate in the farm, right from our water treatment plant at the winery to waste products to our vineyard waste to olive oil making, winery waste, everything finds its way down to our compost production facility. And so we now have green fertilizers that just after the harvest, which will be coming up sort of early May, end of April, early May, we start working that product back into the vineyards. We still do monitor our requirements, fertigation requirements through our leaf sampling, but we've noticed over the years we're using less and less and less inorganic fertilizers, and it is just wonderful to walk through the vineyards, see the compost, see the green mulch that we generate ourselves, and know that everything, it's a closed circle, that everything that we use in the farm is reused in the vineyards.
And at a fundamental level, that is better for the entire wine story, but it's a story that hasn't always been accepted or appreciated or been too important for a lot of wine consumers. Carl, you spend most of your life in distant corners of the planet spreading the gospel of Tokara in particular, South African wine in general. How much more have you found in the last few years people are asking you questions like this, asking about how you're farming, how you're making the wine?
Well, grey water and grey waste management has never been sexy. So it's not something one wants to talk about. But I tell you, the countries that are really focusing very heavily on selecting wines that accomplish and accommodate those principles are the Scandinavian countries. Sweden and Denmark and Norway, they have those philosophies very high on their lists. So we're finding it a hell of a lot more rigorous in terms of their coming in and having a look and auditing what you say. I mean, there are many things that go on the back of labels, and you'll find some wine labels saying the cooling sea breezes and the winery is situated 380 kilometers from the nearest coastline. So those sort of factoids need to be checked, and they are actually now doing that checking. So we very, how would I put it? We're quite humble because we've been doing it since the inception of the farm. I mean, it's a project that Aidan started 23 years ago, and it's still running. And now it's become quite popular to talk about, and finally sexy. Yeah. Grey water management is finally sexy.
So it's giving you an added string to the bow of selling wine around the world. But most importantly, the wine still has to taste amazing, and that's always been an advantage that you have had. We've got a selection in front of us, and the one in particular I'm looking at is the one in the middle. It's got a hefty murder weapon kind of feel to it from here. That's not a small bottle of wine. It's also one you don't make in a huge amount. Tell me a bit about the Telos.
So that is made in 1,000 units only, every single year. We have vineyards that Aidan has planted and has nurtured and managed for the last 25 years on the estate. And one of the varieties that has matched with our site perfectly is Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's always been an idea to have an extreme example of the perfect match between Tokara terroir and Cabernet Sauvignon as a variety. And Telos is the embodiment of that. And it's also the embodiment of us as a group of people who get to play in the Ferreira sandpit with their wonderful toys to give something back and say, this is how good your investment of time, your perseverance has been. And this is us giving it back to you. And it's an exceptional wine. We've launched now, this is our third vintage, all of them scoring 96 points and higher. This is a 97 points from Tomatkin. And it's a splendid version of Cabernet Sauvignon. It really is.
It sounds like it could be Elon Musk's newest car. It's not dissimilar in price because it is so good and so rare, and you do well to get hold of it because I know I've tried and failed in the past. When you look at it through the eyes of a viticulturalist, Aidan, does this, the moment you taste it, just scream out, I know where this comes from and I'm very proud of what's emerged?
It does. I think what excites me more, I mean, the wine is magnificent, but that vineyard is just a perfect little vineyard. It's small, it's on the perfect site. When we laid out the farm 20-something years ago, we obviously had choices of soils. We had a blank canvas to work with. And there were a few sites that stood out as potentially being special. We didn't know how special it would be, and it's taken a good 15 years to find that answer. But this is a perfect vineyard. If I had to take you onto the farm and show you a Cabernet block where the canopy is in perfect balance, the shoot distribution, everything. This, if I could have a whole farm of this, it would be fantastic. It is a viticultural dream to work in this particular block on the farm. It's my happy space.
Oh yeah, they get quite excited, these farmers, don't they?
First time.
It headlines your red offering, and your red offering for a long time has been so well established. But I feel that half the conversations I've had with anybody from the Tokara team over the last few years have been around white wine, because so much of your story and your success over the last few years has not been in red.
Yeah, it has. And I think this is the exceptional example. Sadly, a misunderstood category, but Bordeaux Blanc, so a Bordeaux-styled white wine, a blend of Sauvignon and Semillon, ultra-ripe, beautiful, unctuous grapes coming from the highest vineyards on the property, barrel fermented and aged for 9 months and then in bottle for a year. It really typifies the category in South Africa. We started emulating the great wines 15 years ago, like the wines that Andre van Rensburg made. I see he's brought out some new ones that are equally as good. And we started emulating it. I think we've got to a stage now where hopefully other people are looking at this and seeing the success of the amalgamation of those two grape varieties and saying, hey, maybe we can take this even further. I'm hoping so. This is my favorite wine of the lineup. It's an exquisite wine. It always is. And it's a food pairing par none.
I think what gave this wine the stamp of approval from our side, from the farming side, is many years ago we set up these capture cameras on the farm to see if we had leopards on the Simonsberg Mountain. At that stage, no one knew where there were leopards. And the two vineyards that the cameras were positioned, or we had 4 cameras, but 2 of them is the 2 blocks that contribute to this wine, the Semillon and the Sauvignon Blanc. And in both those vineyards, I've got a file of incredible leopard photographs. And my treasured one is a mother and 2 cubs coming past. So somehow Mother Nature said, these are cool vineyards, we're going to hang out here. And yeah, all my leopard photographs are from the director's white vineyards, which is a little tickle for me, for us on the farm.
It does slightly reframe the invitation Carl gave me to camp out in the vineyards at Tokara. I might hold off on that. I'm going to be tasting all of this wine in just a moment and pairing it with David Higgs's majestic menu here at Marble, and wine that is already superb, elevates to another level in the company of fantastic food. In closing, on the subject of elevation, after those dark times that we try not to think about or remember, the Tokara brand I often see as a bit of a bellwether of South Africa, because you guys are always very progressive. You're always charging off first to get back to where you were or take South African wine into new spaces. 2023, is this a year that Carl Lumber is feeling pretty confident about?
I think we have noticed that if you want a measure of how successful 2023 is going to be, you just have to look at our tasting room. If you walk into our tasting room, you look around for the Tower of Babel, because there are 12 different languages being spoken in one tasting room, which means the tourists are back. So the whole of the Western Cape, the whole of the Cape Winelands is a tourist mecca. And we don't rely solely on them, but man alive, they make things a lot easier. So I think that the world has wakened from its slumber, and let's hope that there's no hangover from what we went through in 19 and 20. And I think it all bodes well for an incredible year.
And final word from the farmer, harvest 2023. Are we excited?
We are very excited. I mean, we measure harvest in the quality of the fruit at this stage before it's got to tank. We've had no disease problems this year. We've had no extreme weather conditions. The yields are looking wonderful. We are holding that it's going to turn out to be a fantastic vintage. And everyone we speak to in the area is also very excited about 2023. So start saving, them wines are going to be good.
Well, if the farmer is confident and the marketing man is confident, it sounds like it is going to be a pretty good year. It's certainly going to be a very good afternoon. I have a bottle of Telos to demolish, some Director's Whites to sample, and 1 or 2 other wines to have a crack at purely in terms of research. So another chapter in the Tokara story, and there's quite a battle out at Tokara at the moment. Is it the red wine or is it the white wine that is headlining what they do? So many awards, particularly at the recent Wine Mag Amarum 10-year report for their white wines, which are not just being produced beautifully, but aging beautifully as well. But then some of those reds, headlined by that Telos. It's not cheap, it's not easy to get hold of, but gee, is it magnificent. And this current vintage, as we saw from Carl and Aidan, promises to be right up there with the very best of them. From a beautiful part of the world as well. And that wraps up the show from a beautiful part of Cape Town, Culture Wine Bar. Thanks to the team here for looking after us, Caroline and her assistant Matt. It's a place I really enjoy coming to. The wine library you can get a membership to. It's a great place to come and relax during the week. It's also a great place to come and hang out in the evening, not just for a good time, but also to further your wine education. The sheer volume of wine available by the glass and the ability to shoot the breeze with people like Caroline and learn so much about wine in a short space of time, and do so not just over a glass of South African wine, but over a glass of wine from pretty much anywhere in the world. That is at the heart of the charm and appeal of not just culture as a whole, but this wine library upstairs. I'm going to be back here soon. Keep an eye out. I've got some wine adventures planned for this part of the world. In the meantime, big thank you to the team at Creation for being with us earlier on in the show, and the team at Marble for looking after us with Tokara. We'll be back again next week. This is Dan Really Likes Wine with Norman Goodfellows. Keep drinking. Goodbye.